Well, it's 5 o'clock, or a little after 5 o'clock, but I think I'll start by saying good evening, everybody. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jonathan Overpeck, and I'm the Samuel A. Graham Dean of the School for Environment and Sustainability. That's for Environment and Sustainability at the University of Michigan. And my thanks to all of you for being here tonight. The Peter M. Wege Lecture Series focuses on critical issues of sustainability. It's named in honor of the late Peter M. Wege for his countless contributions to our university, and especially to U of M's Center for Sustainable Systems, which is an integral part of our school and our campus, and one of the driving forces behind tonight's event. Since its launch in 2001, the Wege Lecture Series has covered a wide range of topics, ranging from sustainable cities, transportation, climate change, to biomimicry, and even Earth Day reflections by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. This evening, our lecture returns to the critical subject of climate change, which has been addressed in this series by people like Vice President Al Gore, and in 2016 by one of our special guests here tonight, Wege Maria Figueres, former president of Costa Rica and brother of our speaker this evening. Accompanying Wege Maria and our speaker tonight is their mother, Karen Olson. Trying to see where she is. Right in the front row, that's great. Former First Lady of Costa Rica, former ambassador, former member of Costa Rica's Legislative Assembly, an overachiever for sure. In partnership with our late C's alumnus, Alvaro Ugalde, Karen Olson worked to establish Costa Rica's national park system a long time ago, and hopefully many of you have experienced this amazing national park tradition. And she set a global standard for conservation for the rest of the world to follow. We're very honored to have Karen Olson and Wege Maria with us here tonight. Thank you for coming. Well, it's wonderful to see so many people here tonight. You know, the challenge of climate change can be daunting. It can be daunting in small ways and in big ways. But I, for one, am inspired by the growing momentum we're seeing, evidenced by all of you in this room, working together across disciplines, sectors, boundaries, you name it. It seems like the community here, the nation here, and the planet is coming alive to deal with climate change, finally. We've been doing that at SEAS, the School for Environment and Sustainability, for decades, applying interdisciplinary expertise, but also anchoring our work in the principles of justice, partnering with people in the community who are ultimately affected to make sure the solutions work in the real world. And we want to work with all of you going forward to find real solutions to this and other problems. And I firmly believe that we have the greatest impact when we all work together. My heartfelt thanks go out to Peter Wege, our late benefactor and inspiration behind this lecture series. We are indebted to Peter, his family, and the Wege Foundation for their generous support, without which this event would not be possible. And while Peter passed away several years ago, his environmental philosophy lives on in his foundation's work and in the many projects at the University of Michigan and elsewhere that he has touched and the foundation has touched. Let's take a moment to remember our benefactor, Peter M. Wege, with this brief video.
The steel case started green in 1970, actually. We didn't know what green meant at that time, but we tried to improve everything we could in the process of making furniture to make it safe. We had local people, we had students, and we had professors, and we had the University of Michigan and other people like that working on projects that we were trying to solve. One was air, water, clean air, clean water, and the proper disposal of waste. That's how we started. And so people were not doing that in those days, and we didn't have the EPA at that time to really say you can't do that anymore. You're creating all the bad stuff that has to be cleaned up. Why not do it right in the first place? So that's where we started in 1970. Do all the good you can for all the people you can for as long as you can. Just if you did that in your life, just think of what would happen.
Thank you. I hope many of you share the desire tonight to be inspired, and I think Peter Wege is one of those people who inspires us. And there'll be more inspiration coming. But before we get underway, I'd like a few people to stand and be thanked and to acknowledge their role. And the first is Mark Van Putten, who's the CEO of the Wege Foundation and a big friend of the University of Michigan and Michigan in general. Next, I want to acknowledge the Erb Family Foundation, benefactors of the University of Michigan's Erb Institute, another of tonight's sponsors. We're lucky to have John and Debbie Erb with us here tonight, I believe. Yes. Thank you. And I'd also like to acknowledge the new president of the Erb Family Foundation, Neil Hawkins, who is also here. All three are longtime friends, supporters, and collaborators of many here at the University of Michigan. And lastly, a big thanks to Liesl Clark, the new director of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, soon to be known as the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE. And also to Kara Cook, Policy Advisor for Energy and the Environment to Governor Gretchen Whitmer. It's incredibly fitting that you're here, given the recent announcement by Governor Whitmer that we're going to join the Climate Alliance. Michigan is still in to the Paris Agreement, and we're grateful for all the work you did to make that happen. Thank you. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Mark Schlissel, the 14th president of the University of Michigan and the first physician scientist to lead this institution. President Schlissel will introduce tonight's speaker. Since beginning as president in 2014, Mark has launched initiatives including academic innovation, biosciences, diversity, equity, and inclusion, poverty solutions, precision health, and the Go Blue guarantee, which provides free undergraduate tuition to Michigan families who need it most. And especially exciting news to all of us here tonight is Mark's recent announcement of the University of Michigan's intention, and we're the largest public research institution in the world, our intention to pursue a path to carbon neutrality and to show other institutions our goal is to show other institutions, businesses, communities, not just how to do it, but to work with them to help speed the transformation to carbon neutrality in Michigan, the nation and beyond. Visionary idea. We thank Mark Sissel for this. Just last month, he appointed a commission of students, faculty, and staff, as well as regional partners, to recommend how to achieve this goal. And I, as much as anyone in the university, anyone in this crowd, anywhere in the community, appreciate the President's commitment to building a more sustainable future and assure you tonight that there are a lot of good things yet to come. Please join me in welcoming President Mark Sissel.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks to Dean Overpeck for that very kind introduction, and thanks to all of you for coming today for this very special talk. I want to add my appreciation to that of the Dean for the leaders and supporters of this important lecture who are addressing the ongoing challenge of making our planet healthier for all of humanity. I welcome former Costa Rican President Jose Maria Figueres back to campus, and especially thank former First Lady of Costa Rica, Ambassador and Legislator Karen Olson. Our friends also from the administration of Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the Wege Foundation, and the Herb Foundation. The late Peter Wege, this lecture's namesake, continues to shape our society today through his commitment that we should honor the environment and with respect for sustaining life as we know it. The University of Michigan Commission on Carbon Neutrality co-chairs are also here with us today, Professor Stephen Forrest and Jennifer Haverkamp, so I'd like to welcome them as well and thank them for their efforts. And of course, all of the students from the University of Michigan and beyond. It's your future that we're examining tonight, and I applaud you for your engagement. In advance of the global conference that would lead to the Paris Agreement on climate change, a 2015 article by Elizabeth Colbert in The New Yorker described the monumental challenge faced by our featured guest. The Copenhagen Climate Conference 6 years prior had broken down, resulting in pessimism and fractured interests. Of all the jobs in the world, the piece said, Christiana Figueres may possess the very highest ratio of responsibility, preventing global collapse, to authority, practically none. 4 months later, a new worldview had emerged, signaled by the bang of a gavel in Paris, and backed by the harmony of purpose, responsibility, and recognition of a single global problem amongst 195 nations. As Andrew C. Revkin wrote in the New York Times, between the tumultuous breakdown in Copenhagen and the cheers and bubbly in Paris, climate change diplomacy underwent a grand metamorphosis. And at its center was Christiana Figueres. Taking over as the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 2010, she began to establish a new path forward. She brought a level of determination that matched the enormity of the problem she hoped to solve, saying she stubbornly, relentlessly injected optimism into the system. She engaged with stakeholders from around the globe, including OPEC nations, developing nations, world leaders, and business leaders. She worked tirelessly to advance discussion of climate change through shared values rather than self-interest, demonization, and blame. And of course, she relentlessly pursued a global accord all the way to the finish line, prodding, cajoling, and rallying the nations of the world to a deal, as CNN's Christiane Amanpour said after the agreement was announced. Her years-long approach has resulted in a new collaborative model for 21st century diplomacy, one she asserts is rooted in anthropology, the discipline of her master's degree from the London School of Economics. I look at the history of mankind, Figueres said, and where we are now is that we see that nations are interlinked, inextricably, and that what one does has an impact on the others. Acknowledging the complexity of climate change and the resulting web of stakeholders is a primary reason we've taken a broader and more comprehensive approach at the University of Michigan, one that celebrates and aligns with our public mission. We seek to contribute to a more sustainable and just world with an impact that spreads far beyond the borders of our campuses. Like all large institutions, U of M needs a valid, actionable plan to achieve carbon neutrality, and we will get there. But our Commission on Carbon Neutrality will also develop approaches and solutions that are environmentally sustainable, involve the regional community, and create scalable and transferable models. And as our featured guest has demonstrated during her time with the UN and since, collaboration across traditional boundaries will be key. Because we'd be selling ourselves short, along with our talented researchers, students, and partners, if we did not marshal the full scope of our public mission and the breadth of our academic talents, and if we did not devise ways to leverage the commitment of our entire community. While the Commission is getting to work, our university continues to reduce its carbon emissions. We're working on an agreement to purchase renewable energy for the campus, which will assure that we meet or exceed our goal of cutting campus emissions by 25% well in advance of our 2025 target date. Christiana Figueres earned her undergraduate degree from Swarthmore College and began her career in public service as minister counselor at the embassy of her native Costa Rica in Bonn, Germany. She served as a member of Costa Rica's climate change negotiating team for more than a decade, and in 1995 founded the nonprofit Center for Sustainable Development of the Americas. Her father and brother served as presidents of Costa Rica. Karen Olson was the nation's ambassador to Israel and a member of the Legislative Assembly. No pressure on her sister. Since leaving the UN, she's continued to lead the battle against climate change, including serving as vice chair for the Global Covenant of Mayors, a climate leader for the World Bank, and as the convener of Mission 2020, a global initiative that seeks to protect the most vulnerable from the worst impacts of climate change and usher in an era of stability and prosperity. In 2016, Fortune magazine named her number 7 amongst the world's 50 greatest leaders, and Time magazine listed her as one of its 100 influential leaders of the world. Yet another recognition of her influence comes from my own discipline of biology. The global metamorphosis she's sparked, the sharpness she brings to her life's work, and her reverence and love for humanity are all enshrined in the taxonomy of our world. As a tropical moth, a Costa Rican wasp, and a rare orchid have all been named after Ms. Figueres. I hope that our opportunity today to hear from such a monumental diplomat and leader renews in each of us a sense of optimism about the challenges that lie ahead. Please help me welcome Christiana Figueres.
President, thank you very much for that very, very generous welcome to the University of Michigan. And I'm actually quite grateful for a couple of things this evening. The first is for the wisdom of the universe, because the universe is so wise that somehow this conversation here got scheduled on a Thursday afternoon and not on a Friday at noon. Because if it were Friday at noon, we would all be at the dialect. But hopefully this conversation here will help us to understand the importance of what our young people are teaching us. So let me actually start by thanking you, President, thank you very much, and the Dean Peck, thank you very much, not only for the invitation to come, but truly for the leadership that both of you, plus many other faculty and other members of the community are showing precisely with the Commission on Carbon Neutrality. Never has a topic been more timely, more urgent, and more important for everyone here in this campus, in this city, in this state, this country, and on the planet. And so because we know that the University of Michigan is the lead and they are the best, I have full confidence that this commission is going to take at least the campus, if not the city and the entire state, to carbon neutrality in a timely fashion, because carbon neutrality too late doesn't cut it. And we are here tonight to honor Peter Wege, and our thanks go to him for his leadership over his entire lifetime. And you saw his motto in life, which I find tremendously inspirational: to do all the good for as many people as long as you can. In my book, that includes the next generation. So tonight we're here to honor Peter Wege. We're also here to honor intergenerational responsibility. And let me start at home. I am here following the footsteps of my good brother, who was here 2016 delivering the same lecture. Hold it, is it the same lecture? A different one, okay. But certainly in the same lecture series, and that's actually quite unusual for us to have the opportunity to do something like this. He was just asking, is there another brother and sister pair that is going to be in the lecture series? I don't know, but I was going to propose that if this is going to be a University of Michigan and Figueres family enterprise, then I would like to announce that we have 2 other younger siblings. The good news is there are only 2 other siblings, unless, of course, my mother would like to stand up here and make a surprise announcement that we don't know of. All joking aside, truly we are facing a monumental challenge here of intergenerational responsibility, and we are at no less than the momentous crossroads of human history, because what we oldies are deciding right now is basically going to decide the quality of life on this planet for at least the next 100 years. Just think about that, because we're not used to thinking in that time period, that time frame. We think that what we decide today is going to affect our families, our communities, our country for maybe, I don't know, a couple of months, a couple of years, 1 4-year electoral cycle. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about decisions today, particularly investment decisions, particularly policy decisions, that because they will have their attendant lock-in emissions, they are going to affect the quality of life for at least 100 years. Well, that puts quite a bit of pressure on us. And I think it's quite appropriate that at least the Figuereses, if not the Weges, who couldn't be here, but otherwise they would have also been here in a couple of generations. But this really is an impressive moment, a daunting moment in which our 2 generations, the youngsters and the oldies, our 2 generations are basically bookending that decision that is going to determine the quality of life on this planet. So my generation is the first generation that has actually developed the scientific understanding of science. You know, we get trashed. My generation gets really trashed about having been so irresponsible. I'll take the trash because I agree. And yet, my generation deserves credit for having developed the science on climate change and for having given us the certainty that we now have of what we're looking at if we do not take the decisions that we have to take. We have also, as a generation, developed the technology, not all of it, because we leave that to the next generation, the next engineers, to continue on that path. But we have developed a huge assortment of technologies that are actually incredibly helpful because of their descending price to take us to a solution space. We also, out of no no plan of our own, but because the universe is wise, we have also amassed, since 2008, since the financial crisis, financial resources that are basically a financial wall now waiting to be deployed toward what we hope is the new economy. And in a very tiny, weensy little Lilliput way, really tiny, we have started to chart the course toward addressing the challenge. Started. Certainly not finished our job, but we have started. Now, that is what my generation has done. The generation represented by my mother here, the older generation, had no idea what climate change was. No idea. And so you have to put yourself into that, mindset of understanding what the difference is between that generation and this generation that understands and that has, because of understanding, we have the full current responsibility. Fast forward to the generation of the young people here today. Your generation is the first generation that is going to feel the full impact of climate change. I had a grandfather who lived until he was 105. I expect that I will hopefully get somewhere close to that. But that means that I will not witness the full impact of climate change. The young people will. You will witness the full impact of climate change, of which we now only have a small taste around the world, and that taste is already bitter and painful enough. So we are bookending. Do you understand that this has to be a deal between these two generations? Because we're bookending the moment in which human history will decide if we actually improve the planet for future generations or if we actually practically destroy the living conditions, not the planet, because she will continue. She's been here 4.5 billion years. I've recently been invited to a birthday party for her 4.5 billion years. So she's going to be around, okay? That's not the issue. The issue is, are we going to have the human conditions under which we can prosper? Because the future generation, the generation that is now coming into decision age, because you are the ones that are going to feel the full impact of climate change, that is why the school strikes are important. That's why they are critical. And this is a shout out to tomorrow. At noon, do you know, we're going to have 1,300 strikes around the world in what yesterday was 98 countries. We hope that it's going to be to 100 countries by tomorrow. But this is extraordinary, right? This is extraordinary, and frankly, thank heavens, about time for that generation to hold us to account. Hold us to account. It is not the responsibility of high schoolers to solve this problem. It is their opportunity to hold us to account, to continue to make sure that we're on a safe path here. And did you know? Yes, Greta Thunberg, the Swedish young woman who's 16, started and inspired all of this. But do you know that it is 3 young women who are organizing everything in the United States? They're teenagers. They are 16, 12, and 11. And they are organizing all of the strikes in the United States. Go. So with that context, and please hold that as the frame for tonight, this intergenerational responsibility that we have. In that context, I want to now paint inside of that bookending process and paint for you, where are we? Where are we in this challenge? So let me say, 5 years ago, let's say 3 or 4 years before the Paris Agreement, the world was definitely headed for a future that would go to a temperature rise of at least 4, if not 5, predicted by the World Bank to 6 degrees. Goodbye, future. Just absolutely impossible and unacceptable. With the Paris Agreement in 2015, we were able to bring the projected temperature rise to somewhere between well below 2 and 1.5 degrees. Much better. Was it enough? Well, no. It wasn't enough, and I want to be the first one that stands corrected, because we did that in 2015 because that's the science that we had. But since then, fortunately, our fantastic climate scientists, thank you, Peck, our fantastic climate scientists have actually given us one more whop on the head, and they have said, through the IPCC report that came out in October of last year, they have said, well, frankly, you can't go to 2 degrees. And for the first time in climate science history, they really unpacked the difference between 1.5 degrees, a world that goes to 1.5, and a world that goes to 2 degrees. Well, I'm not going to read the entire, how many pages is it? 300 pages. But here's my one-sentence summary of that. That half a degree makes a world of difference. And this is the first time that we know that. Because the world that we will experience, you will experience, because I won't. But the world that our young people will experience, if we go to 2 degrees as opposed to 1.5 degrees, is actually going to have 2 to 3 times as much loss in biodiversity, 2 to 3 times as much destruction of basic infrastructure, and 2 to 3 times as many people exposed to life-threatening heat and hunger. A scenario that is impossible to accept. There is no way, under any circumstances, that we can accept that that is the scenario that we are causing. Because let's understand that inaction of climate change causes that scenario. So no way that that is going to be the scenario that we are going to accept. The only ceiling on temperature rise that is now morally acceptable and according to intergenerational responsibility is a 1.5 degree ceiling. So to all of you who were very valiantly, courageously figuring out what are you going to do in your institutions, in your corporations to get us to 2 degrees, fantastic. Search and replace. Search for 2 degrees, replace with 1.5. Now, every single one of you is going to say, impossible. We have no idea how we're going to get to 1.5. Correct. That doesn't mean that we therefore throw our hands up and say, therefore, we're not going to try. Because the consequences are so grave that we can't afford not to harvest every single gram of our ingenuity, our stubbornness, our creativity, our policy, our finance, everything, to make sure that we're actually on a 1.5 degree path. Now, are we on that path? Most certainly not. Where are we? We're in the transition toward some path that we haven't decided yet. And any transition is by definition messy. Have you ever had a personal, corporate, or any other transition that is not messy? They're all messy, of course. And I would characterize this messy transition that we're in as basically a bifurcated reality. 2 realities that are equally as present, that have equal standing, at least with respect to different people who gravitate toward those 2 realities, but there's one reality that I think that we have to actually gravitate toward. But we do have a bifurcated reality. The bifurcated reality is, on the one hand, we have the international political reality in some countries. And here we have, in this fantastic country where I had the pleasure of living for 20 years, we have a fascinating phenomenon that I call national rubbernecking. This obsession with what's happening over here. And it's actually being contagious in other countries. And here's the analogy, the world is unstoppably and irreversibly going down a decarbonization path. That is unstoppable. Nobody's going to reverse that. It is unstoppable no matter what. So all countries, all, you know, not all, but many corporations, many financial institutions, they're all moving in that direction. Then we have a little problem. We have one vehicle that used to be on that path that parks itself on the side. All the lights are out, therefore I call it the dark house. It's no longer the White House, it's now the dark house. All the lights are out, and the only lights that are there are orange flashing lights. And everybody is like doing the rubbernecking, looking at the orange flashing lights. Dudes, if you keep on looking at those flashing lights, you're gonna crash. Forget about them. It is a little bit difficult for me to have a conversation with someone who says they don't believe in climate change. Really? Well, if you don't believe in gravity, that's fine. It still has a gravitational pull on you. If you don't believe the Earth is round, that's fine. It's still round and it's still going around the sun. If you don't believe in climate, that's fine. It still has its effect on you. So, you know, let's not think that it's a religion, a myth. You know, it's not about believing. Please, let's take that verb out of there. Either you understand climate science or you don't. But it's not about believing. This is not a religion. So I have no patience for that. Now, unfortunately, the darkness of the dark house was a little bit contagious down into Australia for a while, but Australia is course correcting. And the next election that we're going to have in Australia is going to correct that course quite remarkably, again, because Australia has been doing course correcting for about 10 years. But let's hope that this time they actually stick to the road. And we don't know where Brazil is going to go. But I count 3 countries, okay? The United States, we know where they are. Excuse me, we know where the White House is, because that's not where the United States is. We know where the White House is. We know that Brazil is course correcting, and then we have Brazil. I count 3 countries. So to those who tell me, well, is the Paris Agreement off the rails because nobody is doing it? I'm like, can you count to 3? Or in fact, can you count to 2? Because Australia is coming back to the family, right? So let's not get drowned in this rubbernecking and this incapacity to see that, in fact, even in this wonderful country, 60% of the economy continues to decarbonize. That is 13 states, 1,000 cities, many thousand corporations continue to decarbonize because it is good for their economy. So let us take that piece off. But it does, in the international geopolitical conversation, that is a political reality that many countries need to deal with. What's the other reality? The other reality of the bifurcated realities is the real economy. Much nicer to deal with the real economy than with the unreal international politics. So in the real economy, we have several exponential curves that are beginning to appear, that are actually quite exciting. Let me take coal to start with, my best friend, because it is the most carbon intensive of all the fossil fuels and the first one that needs to take the exit strategy. I see that over there in red. So, you know, please take the exit, coal. And the fact is that we are seeing coal exit the energy market world around, either because of global climate change issues or because of local health issues. But coal has, frankly, lost its social license, and it is very quickly losing its cost advantage. Because in places as surprising as India, it is now much cheaper to put in new solar energy than it is to run the outmoded coal plants. And that is why we're beginning to see this incredible move away from coal. So we're seeing in Europe, because of policy and public opinion intolerance to coal. We're seeing early retirement. The last announcement was Germany and Spain doing early retirement of coal. We're seeing countries doing total phase out of coal, as in Chile, voluntarily, because all the energy producing, all the electricity producing companies decided they don't want to do coal anymore because it's just not interesting to them. We're seeing the decline of construction of new plants, such as in Australia, and we're seeing canceling coal mines, such as Glencore, the largest coal miner in the world, just last week said shareholders are breathing down their backs so much and putting so much pressure on Glencore that they're actually not going to mine any more new coal. They will continue to mine the coal that they already have open, and that's the next battle to close those. But if Glencore, the largest coal company in the world, says they're not going to go for any more new coal, that's actually pretty impressive and quite a milestone. And then you have the whole financial family, all the financial institutions that have actually said, okay, not only is it problematic for global climate and for local health, it's actually also a huge financial risk because coal is losing its value. It is becoming very quickly, if not already is, what they call a stranded asset. So you have insurance companies such as Zurich, SCOR, Swiss Re, Allianz, AXA, all of those insurance companies saying, we're not insuring coal anymore because it's too risky. It's too risky, pulling insurance premiums from them. You have banks started by the World Bank, then all of the other regional development banks, and then a list as long as you can imagine of private banks that are saying we are not going to finance coal anymore. Too risky to finance coal. That's actually the way that it should occur. Okay, we should have a compounded argument, compounded imperative of what is moral, what is healthy, and what is economically feasible and profitable, and all of that should actually stack up with each other to make these decisions. And that is what is happening to coal. I'm not saying that we're going to get rid of coal worldwide overnight. No, there is a big head of coal that is disappearing. There is also a long tail of coal. But the tail is getting much thinner. So, goodbye coal. Thank you very much for what you did last century. But, you know, just like me, oldies, I hope people are going to start to thank me and retire me very soon. And that's what we should do with coal. Thank you, coal. Retired to the museum. Thank you. Oil. The next fossil fuel that is going to be on the demise. Especially oil for transport sector, right? Because we use oil for other things. But oil for transport sector is also seeing its demise, in particular because of what the University of Michigan knows very well, electrification of transportation. And I am very sorry to use an example of GM because we're in Michigan, but it is common knowledge that Tesla was founded in 2013. And when it was 4 years old, it surpassed the market value of GM that was a 100-year-old company. Ouch. That's what technological disruption can do. And that is the kind of exponential progress that we're going to be seeing across all the technologies, certainly of renewable energy, certainly of electrification of vehicles. And we now know that actually just 6 months after the announcement of the market value going above that of a GM, you had a domino effect started by Volvo, but then many, many other car companies that said we're going to go electric. Of course, they've been looking at that for a long time, but they only came public 6 months after the Tesla offense. So you started with Volvo. Today, Volvo only produces electric vehicles. Today in Norway, if you want to buy a vehicle, it's going to have to be electric, internal combustion engine in the museum. And you have companies such as Jaguar Land Rover, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen. What could they do after their emission problem? Volkswagen, certainly GM and Ford, because we're here in Michigan, but many, many others actually moving over with a substantial number of their models over to electric over the next 5 to 10 years, or like Volvo, their entire production over to electric models. And if you don't think that this is disrupting transportation, do you know what a Harley Davidson is? Do you know how loud a Harley Davidson is? Do you know why Harley Davidsons are the most popular motorcycles? Because they are so loud. Now guess what? Harley Davidson in August of this year is putting out its first electric motorcycle. It is going to go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, okay, because there's no pedal, there's no nothing, boom, 6 seconds. It's going to have 140 mile range. You're going to operate it, are you ready for this? With the app on your cell phone, and it's going to be silent. Is that not a new world? I mean, just think, a Harley Davidson that is silent, okay? And they're producing it because they know the market is going to buy it. They're not going to produce it just to have it there and look pretty and be silent, standing in the corner. Okay, so consumer choice is changing dramatically, but so are the vehicle and the motorcycle companies. Now, that is the pull of technology. There's also a push of policy. And the push of policy is, I've already told you, in Norway you can't buy a car now unless it's electric. France, UK, and Scotland. UK and Scotland are different. France, UK, and Scotland are actually moving into banning the internal combustion engine over the next 10 to 15 years. Netherlands, the same thing. India, by the way, India is a developing country. India is moving all of its vehicles to electric over the next 3 to 5 years. You should know that 80% of the vehicles in India have 2 wheels. All of those are going electric. Powered by my mother, the sun. I mean, this is a new world. Okay, this is a completely new world, and China, of course, the largest market in the world, is putting more money into electric vehicles than anybody else, and has already started the installation of recharge stations that just for China is that installation park for recharge stations is bigger than the entire world put together, because that's what China does. So they're also considering the date in which they're going to ban the sale of the internal combustion engine. So again, I'm not here to say that when you wake up tomorrow morning or even Saturday morning that all vehicles are going to be electric. No, it's going to take a long time until the fleets actually are moved over to the new technology. There's a fat head. There is a long tail. And the long tail will be with us probably in this sector longer certainly longer than coal. But you have to understand how this is going to be disruptive, right? Because all of a sudden, if you have your internal combustion engine car and you need something to be repaired, are you going to find a mechanic when actually everyone is being trained for the electric vehicle? Are you going to find spare parts? I mean, it puts the car companies in a very difficult situation to have to manage this transition of building both internal combustion engine and getting ready for the electric revolution. So we can talk about that more, but in any event, marks of a huge revolution coming at us. And today we were at M-City and rode these fantastic little buses that are going to be connected, shared, driverless, electric, obviously. I mean, just fantastic what we are going to see, and I certainly pray that I will be here to see all this brave new world. Renewable energy. My third example. Just 8 years ago, we had 4% of the global electricity grid was renewable. Today, we have 23%. Of all of the electricity in the world is renewable. How cool. That means that we are doubling the installed capacity of renewable energy every 4 years, which means it's exponential. Have you ever seen an exponential curve? It goes like this. And that is what renewable energy is doing, to the point that we're going to have 50% of all electricity on all the grids in the world are going to be renewable by 2030, which is exactly, by the way, what science demands. So on that one, we're actually pretty well on track. And why? Because the costs are coming down. Because certainly in solar, we have had a decrease of price of 85% over the past 8 years, and we continue to descend. So today, in countries as surprising as India, Peru, Mexico, UAE, Morocco, Chile, and China, you can already buy solar energy for under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. That is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. We never would have believed that even 2 years ago. China, by the way, to all of those who say, oh, well, you know, the Paris Agreement is not doing what it's supposed to do. Well, I'm here to tell you that China has already not only met, but exceeded what it said it was going to do in the Paris Agreement in 2015. Exceeded. Why? Because they set themselves a very ambitious goal, harvested ingenuity, harvested innovation, and here they are, over-delivering way beyond what they thought that they would do. India, the same thing. India said, promised under the Paris Agreement, that they would have 40% of their electricity be renewable by 2030. What do they know today? Because of what they've been able to install, they will have not 40, they'll have 60%, not by 2030, by 2027. That's India. So, and of course we know that because this is a new sector, obviously it is the sector that is growing in employment generation. That's just, you know, logical. A sector that has already come to its maturity, like the fossil fuel industry, is not a sector of growth for employment, but renewables are. So you have many more people employed in renewables around the world today than you do in fossil fuel. You have 10 times as many patents being filed for renewable energy technology than you do for fossil fuels. If you want to know where the future is, go to the patent office and find out who is filing the patents, because that's where technology is going. It is not going into fossil fuels. So, yes, there definitely is a legacy of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, in the electric grids and in transportation. I'm not going to deny that. But we are moving irreversibly and unstoppably toward a clean world. And in fact, all of the incremental electricity that is going to be installed by 2021 is going to be renewable. So, my friends, we're on to a very exciting future. Those are only a couple of examples, and we can use other examples to illustrate the point that we are moving in the right direction. The question then remains, are we moving fast enough? No. We are definitely not moving fast enough, because all of those sectors are moving forward. We could also talk about the financial sector, but we have other sectors that are not moving. The sectors that I mentioned are moving because they have powerful drivers of change behind them. We have technology, we have price descent, we have policy frameworks, we have capital that is shifting toward them, and they're being incredibly benefited by digitalization, robotics, and artificial intelligence. All of that is helping enormously. But we're not doing the same with the entire family of land use, agriculture, deforestation, degradation of lands. That whole family is not moving forward as quickly as it should. Heavy industry is not moving forward as quickly as it should. And construction is not moving forward as quickly as it should, which is actually, in my book, only a huge opportunity. 60% of the infrastructure that we're going to need for the next 30 to 40 years hasn't even been built. So, all the new infrastructure should get with the program. Zero net buildings, starting now. Hello, how are we not going to do that? And I hope that you've gotten the picture that this is not just an exciting future. This is actually the best economic stimulus the world has ever had. And in a moment where it seems that we're heading into an economic downturn around the world, have we not learned the lesson that, for example, after every world war, we need a mega project that kicks the economy back into motion and does a major investment, particularly public investment, but then brings the private investment and kicks everything back into motion? Well, folks, here we are. Fortunately, we don't have to go through a world war, but this is the moment in which the economic downturn is only going to be lifted up through a mega planetary project, which is decarbonizing the entire economy, producing $26 trillion of additional income, and producing 65 million new jobs, which for young people worried about, are their jobs going to be stolen by robots? 65 million new human jobs, I should have said, is actually a very good news. So, in this transition, is it an easy transition? No, it's not an easy transition. If it were, we would have already done it. Okay, it is not an easy transition. I don't want you to, because of giving you all the good news, I don't want you to go home thinking, okay, well, it's done. It's not done. What we have are lighthouses that are showing us the way, but we still have a lot of work to do. But we have to ensure that this transition is both smooth and sharp descent. We cannot have a smooth and gradual curve. We have to have a smooth but sharp descent of greenhouse gases. We have to be able to incorporate in this transition that we're in all technologies, including carbon absorption, all geographies, all sectors, everyone. We have to be able to figure out how we're going to get to $1 trillion of investment per year. We're almost there. We're about 700 million right now. So we have to get up to 1 trillion starting by next year and then keep that investment up into clean technologies so that we can actually make it in time. And of course, policy needs to align at the national, at the state, the city, and the local level. And finally, very important, behavioral changes. You know, we've totally run out of time on climate change, so if we had done the Paris Agreement is about 20 or 30 years too late. If we had done that 20 or 30 years ago, we could now engage, you know, in a much more thoughtful, methodical, perfect way. We don't have that time. This is now accelerate, turbocharge. And so that means we have to do both the systemic transformation that I have elucidated for you, but also the behavioral changes. And on behavioral changes, I would like, because that means all of us individuals, I would like to point out 5. First, what are we eating? I know it is not popular and it's not politically correct to ask people, how many times a week do you eat beef? But if beef is coming at the expense of deforestation, folks, if you're eating beef 7 days a week, you can certainly move to 6, you can then move to 5, you can then move to 4. I'm not asking you to do something that is against the health of your body. It's actually very healthy for your body to diminish that. In addition to food that is flown 3 times around the world before it gets to your plate, you get the picture. Local, healthy food, first. Second, transport. This is a country that has a huge problem with transport because everybody, 1 person per car. I mean, hello, it is just crazy. I suggest you get a Harley Davidson instead. Can't be, right? So I'm very delighted about the research that is going on here about how you can use electric vehicles in particular to go to the last mile once you have decent public transport. But transport, big issue. Savings, for all of you who are at an age or in the happy circumstance that even if you're not of the age, you already have savings. Do you know where those savings are? If they are in high carbon, you're in big trouble. Not only are you committing a crime against the next generation, but you're going to lose that money. So go home and find out from your asset managers, where is your money? If it's in high carbon, please ask them to exit and move to low or no carbon. One, two, three. And my fourth, voting. I don't think I need to explain that in this country. In some countries I need to explain it, but how cool is it that Michigan turned? Thank you. And I mean, voting at every level, right? I mean, starting from city, county, every vote counts, every vote counts. Please do not export the responsibility of voting to your friends, to your grandparents, to anybody else. You go vote. You go vote at every single voting opportunity. And my fifth suggestion for behavioral change and responsible behavior is to support the student strikes. How are we not going to do that? So tomorrow at noon, I'm going to be in New York, but that's where I'm going to be, out there with those kids. And I hope you're going to be out at the DIAC supporting those young people. Now, finally, I wanted to conclude by extending an invitation to all of you, because here we are at the University of Michigan. This is not, just any place in the world. This is the top of the academic ladder, competes on all grounds with all of the very famous Ivy League private tra-la-la, tra-la-la, tra-la-la. And furthermore, here we are in Ann Arbor, right? So compounded privilege here. So I would like to invite you to join a growing family. And it's a growing family of what I call stubborn optimists. Here's what I mean. I call myself a stubborn optimist, first because I'm an optimist by choice. Because optimism is a choice that we make. It's not a celebration after you have achieved something. That's a celebration. Optimism is an intentional choice that we make of entering into a challenge with an attitudinal choice of a can-do attitude. That's optimism. And if we do not address climate change with optimism, with a can-do attitude, with the conviction that collectively the humankind does have the wherewithal to meet climate change in a timely fashion, dudes, then we're all fried. So we don't have any other choice but to approach this with a positive attitude. And I'm also stubborn about that, first because my family reminds me that I've been stubborn since I was 3, so I'm not going to do anything about that. I've actually decided that it's okay to be stubborn if it's for the common good. So welcome to that. But here's what I mean about stubborn. I mean that as we approach an issue like climate or any other challenge in your personal lives, in your professional lives, planetary, city level, state level, wherever you are, we all have challenges that we're facing. And we have to approach it with optimism, but also with stubbornness, because every single time we will face a challenge, we'll face a barrier, we'll face an unexpected trip over. And if that means that you then walk back and say, oh, well, in that case, I'm not going to do anything about it. Well, how is that doing any good? So we have to be optimistic, but we can't be naively optimistic. We have to be stubbornly, relentless optimistic to know, yes, we have challenges. Yes, the road ahead is difficult. Yes, we don't know exactly how we're going to get to 1.5. Or yes, we don't know exactly how we're going to get to carbon neutrality on this campus by Monday morning. But that cannot stop us. We have to know what is the final destination and then challenge ourselves and invite everyone else to use their creativity, their innovation, their wherewithal to get us to where we need to go, because this is about intergenerational responsibility. So folks, you're all invited to join the growing family of stubborn optimists. Thank you.
Excellent.
That's in your way. That's for
No, no,
little
no.
people. I'll get it off. There you go. There you go.
My name is Greg Keolian. I'm the Peter Wege Professor of Sustainable Systems in the School for Environment and Sustainability, and I'm pleased to be moderating the That's okay.
I'm going to get it off your way. No,
No.
can
You're
be
going to come back
comfortable.
very soon.
No, but then I'll go over there. I'll just get it off your way.
Okay.
This is what happens when you're a little person. You have to get all kinds of.
So I'm
steps.
pleased to be moderating the Q&A session. Thank you. First, I want to personally thank Christiana for an outstanding Wege Lecture and for all your time meeting with the President's Commission on Carbon Neutrality this morning, then the Center for Sustainable Systems External Advisory Board in the afternoon, and all the other meetings in between. She has had a full day. The strategies and guidance you provided us are tremendous for engaging the university, the city, the state of Michigan. It's going to be invaluable in terms of our work to accelerate towards carbon neutrality. You navigated the complexities of COP21 at the international scale. This gives us tremendous hope and inspiration to succeed here at the University of Michigan. So we really thank you. Simple ground rules for Q&A. You could start to line up. We have 2 microphones on the main floor here, and there'll be faculty, I think, by those microphones to assist you. So please start to line up. Rules, please be concise with your questions so more people can participate, so we can hear more of the expertise and experience from and perspectives from Christiana. State your name and affiliation. And we're going to get started at stage right, which is this side. So actually, my student Akshat, you're going to start.
Do you remember all the rules that you were just given?
Do you want to go back here, or are you going to?
Is this on? Okay.
Thank you for a great discussion. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Dr. Keolian, for this opportunity. My question to you is regarding businesses and how they can really bring sustainability to the front and center of their corporate strategy and not just have it be a peripheral artifact. Thanks.
Well, there's actually good news on that because I think we went through a way too long period in which many corporations were, frankly, just greenwashing. They were, putting sustainability on page 179 of their annual reports and not really doing anything other than corporate sustainable responsibility and, helping a little community here or there. I mean, just really didn't move the needle at all. But we're now at the point where corporations are really beginning to put sustainability not on the back burner, but rather front and center. And what is extraordinary is to see that there are a growing number of reports that are coming out saying those corporations that are actually aligning all 3 bottom lines, profit, people, and planet, all 3 bottom lines aligned together are actually outperforming the companies that are not. And that's the stacking of the imperatives that I was talking about before. And what we have to get our heads around is that finally we're at that point in human history where we can do everything at the same time with the same measures. We used to have to choose, am I going to do this or am I going to do that? But now we actually have the capacity to address all of these issues together. Yes, there are some trade-offs that we have to make, but on the whole, we have the capacity to better that. And it is those corporations that understand that that are moving forward. So we now have, I think, 150 of the S&P 500. 150 of those have already taken on the commitment to be 100% renewable, and most of them are already there. They're also working on all of their social and governance issues and contributing very, very clearly to the entire family of SDGs. By the way, those are the companies you want to work for, okay?
Right.
You don't want to give your fantastic brains to companies that are irresponsible. So when you go out there and you get a job, please make sure that the company that is going to use your brains until you form your own company has to be a responsible company that is really doing well and doing good. Because if they're only doing well, they won't do well for long. They will not have business continuity in the 21st century. They have to do well and do good. Those are the companies you want to work for.
Great.
Hi, thank you. Earlier on in your talk, you mentioned fossil fuel divestment, an issue that has been met many times on this campus with vigorous administrative opposition, despite overwhelming community-wide support. What do you see as the role of divestment in the fight against climate change, especially at U of M, which has about $1 billion invested in the fossil fuel industry?
Come back to my cheat sheet because I actually made myself a little list of which universities have divested. So let me say this. I don't think divesting on its own is enough. It has to be aligned with divesting and reinvesting in the things that we do want to incentivize. So just divesting, taking the money out and sitting on it, putting it on your pillow, under your pillow, doesn't work. It's about transitioning the capital from those assets that we know are actually losing value to those assets that are increasing in value. We already have $8.5 trillion of capital that has divested and reinvested over. Are they doing it to save the planet? Honestly, only the religious communities that have a lot of capital are doing it out of a moral reason. Everyone else is doing out of it a sheer economic reason because they know that otherwise they're going to be losing their capital. And it is entirely possible. We have 6 indices in the world already that allow you to look at companies and figure out, are they high carbon, are they low carbon, are they serious about what they're doing, are they underperforming, are they overperforming? I mean, it's all very transparent, and it's not difficult to do. On average, and University of Michigan may be very different, but on average, endowments and capitals, and in fact, the capital is much larger than endowments, the largest asset owners have on average anywhere between 2 and 3% of their investment portfolio in high carbon. So we're not talking about destabilizing the investment portfolio. No, we're talking about protecting the investment portfolio into the future. So entirely possible. And frankly, let me tell you that I have taken a stand. I took a stand last year that I will no longer accept an honorary degree from any university that has not divested and invested. And it was a painful decision because I'm a graduate of Swarthmore College, and Swarthmore has not divested, and we have been in a conversation for several years because they would like me to come back to campus to do XYZ in addition to an honorary degree, and I have put it down because I've said I've taken a decision and we have to do this because we can. If we were requesting something that is impossible, that's different, but we can. Universities only in the United States, okay? Actually, I just picked a few that are recognizable, but this is a short list of universities in the United States. Short list because there are many universities and others who have divested and invested. Some that you've never heard about. Yale, Georgetown, Stanford, Columbia University, Johns Hopkins, University of Washington, University of Maryland, Seattle, University of California, Oregon State, Brandeis, and the list goes on. I just took the ones that are don't have any name recognition. So, have I made my case? It is entirely possible. Not only is it possible, it is the only responsible thing to do with your assets. With your assets. If banks are getting out of coal, if insurance companies are no longer offering insurance to coal, do you think your assets in coal are safe? Banks actually know what they're doing. Asset managers know what they're doing. So let's get this done.
Hello, my name is Haley Hubbard. I'm a senior in environment, and I'm also a wilderness ranger for the Forest Service. I'm looking for more of your wisdom in land use, agriculture, and especially the beef industry. What have you learned about transitioning well?
What was the question? How do we transition well?
Yeah, how do we transition well, especially out of beef? I just have seen the impact of it on the land, and I know its impact on the climate, and it's not really a huge part of the conversation.
Yeah, well, it is for me, but so I think first of all, there are three categories of beef, if we're just going to talk about beef. One is beef that comes directly out of deforestation. So if you have somebody, cattle companies have deforested in order to put cattle in, and that's the beef that you're consuming, well, what do I say, right? Totally irresponsible behavior on our part to incentivize that industry. Then there is beef that that is not coming out of deforestation, which if you consume it, it's not as harmful to the global atmosphere, but it is definitely harmful to your personal body. So why do you want to give an atomic bomb to your body and have it, try to digest something? I mean, honestly, if you stop eating beef and then you eat it for a while, after a while, you will notice that your tummy basically explodes because it's just too heavy to digest. Believe me, I stopped eating it for a long time ago, and now it's just, even chicken sends me already into conniptions. So just don't do it for your health. Then there is the third category of beef, which is plant-based beef. And for those who can't give up a hamburger, and I must admit, sometimes when I walk by a barbecue, I go like, oh yeah, I remember that smell. But it is amazing to me how the quote-unquote meat industry is actually moving over toward plant-based meat, in particular hamburgers. And I unfortunately haven't had the pleasure of tasting this, but my friends who have tell me it is the best hamburger they've ever had. Because, the smell, the taste, even the blood, it's like, okay. But I'm going to just take you into a little time machine. 30 years from now, your kids, for the young people, your grandkids, will pose you an interesting question. They're going to say, excuse me, can you explain to me, how did you eat dead animals? That's what they're going to ask. So you killed animals in order to eat them? Did you seriously do that? That's the question they're going to pose. And they're going to pose that question because it is such a weird concept. And because by then, we will have many other alternatives. So whether you want to do something for the global atmosphere and for your grandchildren, or whether you want to do it for your own body, my suggestion, don't eat meat at least every of the 7 days. Just start cutting it down. Cut it down to 6, to 5, to 4. Pretty soon, you know that you don't need it anymore. That's not politically, I can't tell you how many hate emails I've gotten about that. I've actually even suggested that maybe one really fun thing to do a little bit disruptive, is you know how in restaurants you're not allowed to smoke inside anymore, and if you want to smoke, you have to go outside? Maybe restaurants should say, if you want to eat meat, go outside and eat it, but it's not inside.
Hi, my name is Chris Karunis. I'm a master's student here, and I had the honor of being a delegate to the United Nations Conference of Parties in Bonn, Germany. I'm very grateful for the university for that opportunity, but I also see a lot of things that the university is doing wrong on climate action. We used to think natural gas was a way to lower our carbon footprint, but we're noticing now that just the leaks from the natural gas, the methane itself is causing so much greenhouse gas that it could even be worse than coal. So the university is claiming to be taking climate action by expanding its natural gas power plant. Is that really climate action to expand your fossil fuel plant?
That's going to depend on So let me say this. Admittedly, while we have renewables that are intermittent and don't have other storage capacity, we have to invest much more into storage. I didn't talk about that yet. Much more into storage so that we can move to a future that is only renewables with storage, right? Whether that's pumped hydro as storage or batteries or any other kind of storage, or hydro as storage, anything else. In the meantime, we're in this transition. So if the option is to move away from coal to natural gas as a firming energy for renewables, firming energy, not as the main energy, as a firming energy for renewables, then natural gas is a step up to coal if methane is properly accounted for, which means ensuring that you are actually bringing down all your methane leaks to 1% of the entire value chain. And if that is done, then natural gas is better than coal. If you have unabated methane with natural gas, it's just as contaminating as coal. So then you're not winning anything. So it's a question of, it's methane. And you have methane leaks, you have, well, you know, all the sources of methane, but you've got to control the methane. Otherwise, there's no use in moving over to natural gas. You're not winning. There's a big sign there that says last question.
I'm going to say two more.
Oh.
I'm honored to ask the last question. I'm an alumnus of the University of Michigan, class of 1960, and I'm a former faculty member here. I just want to make one comment about the first question. The U of M is has a much higher percentage of its endowment investments in fossil fuels than the institutions you cited as an average. Ours is about 10%, or as of the last year. So we have a lot of work to do there. My question is about self-reliance, locally, regionally, nationally, and especially internationally. We have this great cost, many kinds of costs, environmental costs, but especially energy costs, in shipping goods, and I'm thinking especially of food, internationally, and we would need to adjust our attitudes and our agricultural production to save energy in that way, and I wonder if you have a comment on that, please.
So I think that conservation of energy anywhere, in buildings to begin with that are not properly insulated, or with lighting or cooling or transport of energy for food, or anywhere that energy is used or rather wasted, definitely that's, you know, the negawatt, as Amor Lovins calls it, the negawatt is the most expensive of all of the megawatts. And it's just stupid, right? It's almost like stepping on a $100 bill on the sidewalk. Why are we wasting energy when we're paying dearly for it currently? Now, to take you into the time warp, again, 30 years from now, because we will have only renewable energy, we will be much more energy efficient, because digitalization is helping us, and smart grids and smart cars and all of that. We will be much more energy efficient about everything that we do. But also, using energy is not going to have the carbon impact that it's having now, right? Because it's going to be all renewable. So for the time being, while we're in this transition, energy efficiency is measure number one, absolutely. And it just makes sense for the bottom line. But then with all of the technologies, it actually will lose its predominance because we're just going to be so much more efficient systemically more efficient. Right now, we almost have to be manually more efficient. We have to make sure that everything that we touch is energy efficient. But the system will improve to the point where, gratefully, that's going to be taken care of by all of these. I'm a great technology believer, as you can see, and the fact that we will have energy and transport being regulated for us is actually pretty exciting to me. The fact that we're going to be generating energy in every single building and even exporting extra energy is actually quite exciting. And can I take off from that to say, do you realize that the onslaught of renewable energy is going to completely change geopolitics in this world? Because think about the fact that we have had at least 50 years, if not 100, where a lot of geopolitics has been around the countries that produce fossil fuels, export, and transport. So a lot of the geopolitics that we have seen, and many of the wars, are to protect our sources of fossil fuels and the transit routes, the transport routes of fossil fuels. Now, when we dematerialize energy, which is what we're doing, right? Because last century, we used to dig up this disgusting slushy thing that used to be called coal and oil and all of that. And now we're dematerializing that so that you cannot grasp a sun ray. You cannot grasp a wisp of wind. So we're dematerializing energy just like we dematerialized music. Do you remember what an LP was? Do you remember what a cassette was? Well, dematerialized music. We're dematerializing energy as well. How exciting is that? And once we dematerialize energy, and once every country is using predominantly their own domestic sources of energy, then those transportation routes lose their geopolitical importance. Of course, then those countries that produce the rare metals that are going to be necessary for renewable energy will then be much more important in the geopolitical shift. But here's the trick. Those rare elements are much more democratically or much broader distributed across the world than fossil fuels are. So we're not going to have the stranglehold, the geopolitical stranglehold that we have right now for fossil fuels, especially for countries that are fossil fuel dependent. And most countries of the world are actually importers and not exporters of fossil fuel. So sorry to take that question and take it to a completely bigger platform, but I just wanted you to get a sense of the magnitude of this transformation that we're in, that even geopolitics is going to have a tectonic shift for us. Very exciting.
So because of time, one of my students, again, I'm going to have you come up and talk to Christiana after we conclude, okay? You're going to be able to ask your question directly to her. But before we close, I first want to thank our signers, Nicole and Angela. And you know about the climate strike tomorrow, but I also want to announce and encourage you to attend the Climate and Energy Lightning Talks that will be presented by 10 faculty from across campus at SEAS at the Dana Building a week from today at 5 p.m. We continue our work on carbon neutrality. So to close, Christiana, you were quoted as saying, "Paris is not the final destination. It is, if anything, the departing station."
Correct.
We are extremely grateful that you personally delivered your wisdom and insights from the Paris COP and your career to us at the University of Michigan and our state to help us succeed with our own journey and carbon neutrality mission. Both you and your brother Jose were awesome Wege Lectures.
Can you attest to the fact that they were two different lectures?
Yes, yes.
Did he write mine or did I write his?
They complemented each other awesomely, perfectly.
Excellent, excellent.
So let's first thank your mother, Karen Olson.
Who is, for the record, not having any more children.
We want to thank you for creating this dynamic duel, okay? Now, please, let's thank Christiana Figueres for her inspiring lecture, your wisdom, your international leadership, your many accomplishments, and your stubborn optimism.
Yes!